don't look at Microsoft's track record the last couple of years. It's like, don't worry, that doesn't apply to us. We're special. Hello and welcome to another Dead Pixel. We're a podcast about video games, anime, movies, entertainment, life, a little bit of everything in between. I'm your host, as always, Joe, and with me, the gentleman who always dresses up as a member of the Rocky Horror Picture Show for every Halloween, Nick. How
Dang,
you
I
doing, Nick?
forgot about that. Yeah, I didn't hear anything about any Rocky Horror Picture Show stuff this time around. So yeah, I put on a wig, that's different from my normal wig that I wear every day, and I found some stockings, uh, and I wore those, and
I assume you're playing Susan Sarandon's character this year instead of your normal, Frankfurter, which is Tim Curry's character.
yeah, I
I mean, you
mean,
make a pretty good Janet.
yeah, that it's it's just the bar is just too low on that. You just have to have a nightgown, and it's just I'm look, if you want to start out in your cosplay journey as playing Janet, totally understand. Um, but once you get to my age, or at least like a couple of years in, um, you just can't do that anymore. You've got to level up. You got to level it up, and you got to just go for gold. You got to be the star here.
I figure next year you're going to be one of two people, and I'm figuring you're either going to be Meatloaf, or was it Peter Hinwood, which is the creation. So you're
Mm.
either going to be super ripped or you're just going to let yourself completely go. One of the two.
Yeah, the
So
creation takes a lot of work. That'd be like a year long process.
yeah,
Um,
you got a whole
uh,
year. We got this on film now.
you're
Let's
right.
do this.
It's
All right.
we're gonna okay.
Next year you're gonna be shirtless. And you're either
Definitely.
gonna, like I said, either gonna be riding a bike like Meatloaf, or you're just gonna be like in hot pants.
Yeah,
Either way,
definitely not gonna do any of
fun for the
that,
whole family.
except for the meatloaf part. But I think I'm gonna be meatloaf. I'm gonna be meatloaf from Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then early in the night, and then later in the night after we start talking about shows, I'm gonna switch over to meatloaf, but from Fight Club,
Okay.
and
For a moment I was expecting you to say "Bat Out of Hell."
or yeah,
So
or Robert Paulson. I'll be Robert Paulson. But yeah, no, yeah, people dressed up at work. Some people dressed up at work. So that was cool to see. Um, but otherwise, yeah, I didn't really do anything for Halloween. I just hung out. How was your Halloween, Joe?
yeah, my kids made out like bandits. And luckily we have a really good neighborhood where there's a couple pit stops on the way that we know the adults can get their drink on.
Mm,
And it seemingly like every year it's been more and more like you'd expect it, like on 4th of July or something, America not having open container laws, which
mm.
still kind of wild in some, like it's needed, but at the same time it's kind of wild that you can't walk around with an open container like beer or alcohol in the wild,
Well, that's the thing
except
is
for
we
like,
do have open container laws,
I'm
laws
sorry, yeah.
against it.
I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
it's not acceptable. It's
right,
not
right,
acceptable. And so like, but Halloween's the one time a year, like it seems like the neighborhood is just fine with it.
mm,
It's like not only are you like, here, you want a to-go cup, or like
yeah.
in other families just stroller and like tall boy in hand. And I
You
was
gotta
like,
you gotta go
oh, okay.
to you gotta go to a Mexican neighborhood. I gotta be honest, because there's a lot of those
There's no
around here,
cops.
and
Uh,
there's plenty of open containers around there. So yeah, it's I see what you're saying, but yeah, that seems to be the way that I'm hearing a lot more about that, where a lot of neighborhoods are having sort of the adult side of Halloween alongside the kids side of Halloween, which seems to be more fun for the whole family.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird things that like there's only a few spots in America where you're allowed to, walk around with a drink in hand. And I know Savannah, Georgia was one of them. And I was like, oh, that's fun. I also just miss being overseas, being like at the Korean E Mart, which is their like Walmart equivalent, and just sitting on the stoop drinking gin and tonics next to the cops watching skateboarders. I mean, that was like good times. Bad nights, but good times. Yeah, it's and then of course, just Japan or something like that, just chilling outside the convenience store as well, and or going just having a drink on the train or something like that. But it's a completely different society over there, and come in here, I'm like, yeah, I really wouldn't want to be sitting next to a person on a train here in Chicago, like if they're drinking, like, yep, you got to stay the clear away from them.
Yeah.
But
It,
at the same time, it's like, well, if you guys are having a picnic or something, it's kind of what's the harm?
mhm.
You know, there apparently is, but once again, look, I understand 4th of July. You're messing with fireworks. You don't want necessarily the whole public being, you know, you got those Mexican neighborhoods for that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, or it's far enough south or far enough north. Go up to Wisconsin, man. Well, it's like you want to have some, fun with M80s. Yeah, let's go. But
Mm,
so Halloween seems to be the okay time. And the other thing is like, hey, you're wearing a costume, so it's going to be hard. As long as you can get away, you're fine with it. They don't know what you look like. But yeah, no, this like I was saying, good times. The weather was windy as hell, but at least it wasn't raining like the year before. That sucked. So yeah, cold rain was not a fun time. Uh, but this year, it was, like I said, surprisingly good. Kids made out, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now they finally got real candy. Like the years before, this like all suckers. Just that's the number one thing they wanted, and couldn't even give those away at work. It's just like, yeah, you
yeah.
you
You've
want dum dums, guys, just take them. But no, it's
I
now we
guess
got like I got real candy to steal.
yeah, I mean I'm okay with like you want to have some I don't know, I guess confection is not really the right word, but kind of like a hard candy or whatever. That's good, but you always have to have at least some chocolate, at least a quarter or preferably a third or half of what you're giving out needs to be chocolate. I know it's expensive or whatever, but you need to be giving out some chocolate. That's my hard and fast rule.
And you got that one jerk at work or on your block who decides to give out like fruit, and it's just like, yeah.
Oh, you.
It's like you aren't winning any fans. Don't try like this one apple or this one like tangerine ain't gonna make a difference.
I
It's
applaud
so
somebody if they also have fruit. They're like, hey, I have made a fruit medley here, or I've packaged some fruit medleys for you of like grapes and pineapple if you want that. But here's the good stuff. Here's the candy. You know.
so the last couple of years I've noticed on Reddit, it's become a popular meme to have like baked potatoes as an alternative. You have your candy bucket and then you have some stack of baked potatoes, and apparently the potatoes have been winning a lot of favors. And then someone said like, yeah, my neighborhood, they like I ran out of potatoes, and then they're like, yeah, prepare to be vandalized later that night. And he's like, oh man, I just have a new fear unlocked.
New fear unlocked. You know what I would do is I would do bacon. I think if I would probably like wrap
Talk
something.
about chocolate being too expensive.
Yeah, I mean you're talking. I mean yeah, this is like upper crust neighborhood here, but I'd probably wrap some like something sweet in bacon or like chocolate drizzled bacon strips. That'd be pretty good. I don't know. I would be into that anyway.
Do that around your apartment complex, man. See,
I do. I do. I try to give it to kids around here, but people always they always hide them from me. They're like, "Don't talk to that man." And then the
like,
police.
don't get into his van. I don't care if he has Xbox and Mountain Dew. Uh,
I haven't gotten a van yet.
all right, guys. We sometimes talk about relevant things like video game news. So why don't you lead us on that gambit?
So there's not a lot of interesting news, but there's a couple things. So first up, uh, so the CEO of PlayStation, his name is Nishino. Um, he basically said that PS5 Pro was always part of the plan, which like okay, I get that. And he said that it's been like a 5 year project for them. And I was kind of reading this article, and I was like, I don't know. It's like I didn't realize it took 5 years to develop a PS5, a pro model for something. I mean, I know it's not nothing, but like 5 years to basically add what they add with these, um, this in between model. I don't know. It just seemed like I just kind of had the curtain pulled back a little bit, and I was like, it's is it that hard? What are we? I don't know. It just like it seemed silly to me that it should take that long. Maybe it's a tangential, like, well, they're not putting all their resources into it, but um, like, does this strike you as odd, Joe? Is it or is this normal to you?
All right. Well, if you're looking at it in the form of like the when they came out with the PS4 Pro, it was pretty well received. It may not have sold gangbusters in comparison, but it was kind of the 4K machine that they were kind of promised with the PS4 because the PS4 didn't quite live up to snuff. Um, and so the Pro, there was a legit need for the Pro, a use case. And so you can see them when they came out with the PS5 that they would, or that was you're talking uh, what, almost 4 years ago now. So it
Yeah,
came out in
John.
November
Yeah,
of 2020.
I think so. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you can totally see them being like, "We're coming out with a new system, and that's this is how the future is going to play out." This is also during the first year of pandemic.
Hmm.
So like everyone's in lockdown. It's scarcity was there. I think that might also contribute to how things played out. Like getting the ball rolling probably took a lot longer. Everyone knows that uh the tail end or like the tail end of the PS4, instead of normally they would have moved on to the PS5 much sooner, but because of the pandemic, a lot of games decided to be cross-platform or
Yeah.
cross-generation. I'm sorry. So they're like, normally they'd be like, no, it's only for the PS5, but because of lockdown and everything, we can totally sell more games, and we're in a hurting situation. So let's make this a PS4 capable game as well. So yeah, and everyone's been talking about for years how silicon's harder to find. It's harder to get fabs up and running for this, that, and the other thing. So, and from what we can see, the pricing on the systems, the systems haven't really dropped down on prices like they did in traditional ways. Where by now the slim versions, or there'd be a price drop, and then the new consoles, usually with a bigger hard drive and or the pro models would slot into that old original MSRP. Uh, but because of all those, difficulties, yeah, I can see it playing out as being taking a bit longer.
Yeah.
So it's not that surprising in that sense. And I always figured the pro model was going to be the new way of thinking.
Yeah.
I guess I was a little disappointed on.
I guess
I mean, the AI stuff is really cool, or the
mm,
generation, the actual hardware, upscaling and stuff like that. That's neat,
yeah.
but I was expecting a more core variables to be higher, like
Yeah.
the actual CPU to be better, but the CPU isn't really. So it's not as the jump. It's not the same kind of jump I was expecting originally.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
I'm not really. Maybe I'm digging into this statement a little bit too much, but just kind of that it was another 5 year project for us. I mean, I'm just kind of like he probably just meant like we've been kind of thinking about this, but when you state it like that, which maybe English isn't his first language or something, but I'm just kind of like it just seems like a lot of time for little. I'm probably just reading into it too much. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like yeah, we all. I think the article also kind of that I'm pulling this from, which is a Video Games Chronicle article. He's talking about how they weren't really sure if they were gonna do a PS5 Pro, and it's like, well, then you should have asked me because I could have told you that you were going to do it. Um, So I don't know. I guess there's probably a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that seems like a lot less likely when you actually have control over it. But anyway, it just kind of struck me. I'm just sometimes I just hear things and it makes me more wary of what they're doing over there at PlayStation. And this
Well,
is one of those
I
things.
would have said I would have put money on the Xbox coming out with a mid step, mid gen refresh as well, before the current,
Mhm.
the current one, the series. But what they, and they kind of said in the beginning, and they've held to their guns. I also thought they were gonna, um, I thought they weren't going to actually contribute to or like hold up to it, but they said originally the X is kind of that, like this is the higher tier, and the S is going to be the more entry system, and that's kind of it. Like all the interviews and stuff saying like these are really expensive to make. We really can't do much to get it cheaper, and we're not really going to do a mid-gen refresh. And I'm like, yeah, right, sure.
Mm.
When I figured when it's going to get long in the tooth, you're going to want the extra money, but you're not going to want to go all in.
For a new form
You're going to
fact.
most definitely do,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, well, the R&D and everything else that has to go along with making a whole new one, set up. You have to do all the legwork. I'm like, yeah, no, that takes too much time. So it makes way more sense just bump a couple specs here and there. New parts get cheaper as time goes on. So then you can just bump up a little bit and preferably have either the same price or a little price drop, and it's a win-win. But no, the Xbox hasn't changed at all. I mean, now the only changes. Um, they're now coming out with the Xbox Series X digital version, and so where the hard drive is just an empty bay, but the die shrunk and the cooling unit dropped. It became a little smaller, but that's really about it. Uh, and I went from 1 terabyte to 2 terabyte hard drive,
Hmm.
so but there's not actually a in-game performance upgrade. So I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, that's it. I mean, so that's actually I'm really surprised that's how they played out, and I would have been wrong, because like I said, I would have put money on it in the beginning of the year or beginning of this generation, being like, totally, they're going to make a new one or a mid-gen refresh. So it's not no surprise that Sony did it. It is a surprise that Xbox hasn't, or at least for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I guess it's um, I don't know. It just seems sort of like sort of weird to me. But yeah. So apparently it was in doubt for somebody. Yeah.
the accountants.
Yeah. I guess it's sometimes I read these articles and I'm like, I just don't know who you're kidding. Um, but yeah, so that's pretty much it for that one. Yeah, there's some more stuff here. Uh, so this one was kind of interesting. The labor body called Communication Workers of America. I think it's British. No, because it's from America. But the way they spelled labor, another thing. Yeah, that was a bad one, guys. I'm sorry. Says Sony closing Firewalk Studios, which made Concord, was to further their monopoly position in the video game industry. Um, and so, like, I just thought, like, I was just reading this and I was like, what? Why? Like, they lost like hundreds of millions of dollars on Concord. Why would they do all of that just to further their monopoly position in the video game industry? And I don't think they're really saying that it was all just for that, but that Sony is using this now to further their monopoly position in the in the video game industry, which I'm still just like, it's entirely incidental if that is what's happening. Um, but yeah, anyway, so um, yeah, this one I was just like, like stop with this. This is craziness. Um, and I don't know. I was weirded out by it. I was like, why would they do that? and these claims are just they're just silly, and I feel like it's people just talking to talk sometimes without actually having anything to back it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it is, it's also just not surprising, but it is weird how they did close the, Firewalk, just because the idea, I guess, was, like, originally it was supposed to be like, "Hey, they're going to make it like do a free-to-play model or something like that, change it up, try to," you spend all this time and effort, why not try to get something out of it? And I guess they did triage and they're like, "Yep, it's just better to, to end this now." And, I think it might be better in the long run as far as maybe they're looking at it as brand name. Like they don't want to hurt their reputation by continuing to drag this out. They already got, they fell on their face and but let's let go before they get dragged through the mud, So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one. It does stink that people have to lose their jobs, and then but once again, it's that article. I didn't get to read it, so I have no idea. But that is a weird thing to say. Uh, yeah,
just to be out about that seemed like okay, well, like do you have any proof? Uh because I mean if you were like, hey, we're connecting the dots, and it was like they only spent a few $1 million or whatever, and then they scrapped it, and they set it up to failure. I'd be like, okay, but like literally somewhere between 200 million and 400 million, depending on which thing you read, and that's how much money Sony lost on this, so they could have one less company that they already owned or they were already making money off of in the industry. It's whatever.
all right.
Okay, so next up, Marathon, the game, the new game by Bungie. They had one of the developers, I guess, I think he said he's like the project lead or something. He's somebody high up there. They had him come on YouTube and talk about the state of the game and stuff like that. So the game's already been delayed to 2025, and there's not really, and they don't like they weren't sharing very much new info as it is, but they were kind of explaining they're explaining sort of the gameplay style, which is a extraction shooter, um, and basically it's like Escape from Tarkov or the other game I forget that they mentioned that it was similar to, but basically in that style. This was coming from a Kotaku article, I believe, but where they kind of compare or give you examples of what the playstyle might be like. But in this video, this guy, he's like, I watched a good portion of the video, and he seems very nervous to me, and he seems like, which he's probably like a computer guy, video game guy. He's probably not really cut out for the YouTube life.
He's the guy who drew the short straw.
Yeah, he's the guy. I know. I think he's higher up than that. I think he's. I don't think he's. I don't think he's that low to get to like to have to draw a short straw or whatever. But he definitely did not seem really in control, which that's kind of like reading through the tea leaves or whatever. But the gameplay, as it's described by him, is not for everybody. But if you like, but if you like this play style or whatever, so I don't know. I was just like, that none of this bodes well. Like already, Bungie is sort of they have good shooting but they're kind of hit or miss on pretty much everything else. Um, and so I'm just kind of watching this guy's video, and and it makes me wish that I could like short sell stock in Marathon or like bet against them somehow, like bet like the under on whether or not it's going to come out on time in 2025, or make or be profitable. Um, because every time I see something like this, I'm just like, this is not helping with me want to buy it. Like it doesn't it doesn't look good to come out and not really show anything, and it's still way too early, and explain what the game's about in like a YouTube video. I'm just like, this doesn't seem like a good use of time or anything. Like, I mean, you shouldn't have mentioned it until it was pretty much ready. But I know that's not like the industry standard, but it's another reason or another example of a game that they should not have mentioned before they were closer to being ready. Which maybe it'll come out and it'll be like amazing, and I'll have to like eat crow. But
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's one of those things that, you know, if you can afford to keep quiet about a game until shortly before release, that makes sense. But with a game as big as this, you can't really do that because if you do the testing like you should, any number of either beta testing or just server tests, it's going to leak. So therefore, you might as well get in front of this. And also, depending on the size studio, with major publishing, you're going to need extra investors, or you're going to have to appease shareholders, or any number of reasoning. So it makes sense why you have to let them know, people know in advance, and you have to kind of temper expectations. I know knowing that it's an extraction shooter, not like a battle royale, is a huge difference, and that does point people in a certain direction. Uh, Now, why would you necessarily make one of these type of games in general? I mean, well, the the goal, I guess, or the wish is to make some sort of live service. The more you're gonna have to try to make a live service game to try to keep the doors open long term. Uh, any big game, it's kind of a flash in the pan type thing. You might sell gangbusters, but if it's a short story based thing, it's really hard to recoup money in the long run. So either you sell out really good real quick, or you kind of suffer in the long run. I mean, you may break even, but that's why you and I may not necessarily like any of these you know online games when it comes to these extraction shooters or even battle royales for that matter, but these live service games, uh, but they kind of are needed in a lot of ways, because even when you hear about Remedy, not necessarily making gangbusters from
mm,
Alan Wake 2 and stuff like that, despite everything, it's sad because it's like as much as we love it as critical, and there's so many games that are critically acclaimed, but unfortunately doesn't necessarily put food on the table. So, yeah, it's kind of how that works. And
yeah,
therefore they're gonna like, well, what can make us money in the long run? Live service games. And it's taboo almost at this point. Like everyone's just like frowned upon, shunned, and the moment you mention it, there's a demographic of people who are kicking and screaming like right out the gate.
yeah. I
So
just think that that the video putting the video out is sloppy. Um, that whenever you come before the public, you have to be really careful about what you show and what you and you have to like. I get that there's realities you've got to meet. Like you have to, you know, you have to stress test eventually, so people are going to know about it. You have to talk to investors, these kind of things. And so I wonder if maybe this is probably just a YouTube video to talk to roundaboutly to talk to investors or whatever, and inspire confidence from the board. Um, but it's uh it's still it's just a bad look. Like if I was a project manager on any of these things, I would fight tooth and nail to be like, no, we're not going to have a developer not actually show anything and just talk about what the game like is, but doesn't move the needle or doesn't like do anything for the actual like advertising of the game. Like that's likely to just bounce back and look bad, you know. So, but there are. I mean, it's probably a hard spot to be in. I imagine, but I was just kind of like, yeah, this does not inspire confidence from me. I probably wasn't going to play it anyway, but like, and also saying not like the gameplay is not for everybody. I'm just like, what in the world are you saying? Like, I know that that is true. There's no gameplay that is for everybody, but at the same time, don't don't say it like that. Say it like this is a this is a thing that people who like this will love or whatever. And he does say that
Play to
in
your strengths and advertise to those who would support you. Uh, yeah, and don't put any negative spin on it right out the gate.
and it's sort of just like he's just talking like people talk, but it's like no, you're selling this game. You with everything that you put out, you're selling this game. You have to think about that as as you do this stuff. So uh, it was one of those things that I was like, this is silly. This is silliness, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because marathon is well, most people don't know what marathon is, but it's it's kind of a historical game, and especially for Bungie, and it's kind of it's a long dead franchise, right? It's like or quote, dormant, right? They haven't been touched in a long time, and then you bring it back as this. I mean, it would have been nice if they did something like for example, how they did like Halo 2, where you come out with a really cool campaign, stellar campaign, and then you have a great multiplayer and you do like the extraction thing as like your Call of Duty Warzone. You have your Call of Duty campaign, and then you have the Warzone as the multiplayer thing. Well, you can have this extraction shooter be the multiplayer thing. Uh, and at the very minimum you have a really cool story and people get people into the lore, um interested in all that and work with the great artwork, and because of that trailer, that reveal trailer was pretty cool.
Mm. It's cool
But
aesthetic.
once
Don't get me wrong. I like the aesthetic. It looks really
Yeah, and
interesting.
if you did a great campaign that way, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But and then you can roll, like I said, have the extraction shooter be, and then put all your efforts into that kind of.
Yeah.
It's like you come out with the campaign, but then you put all the force behind the actual, multiplayer aspect, and that will hopefully make you the money you need to make a sequel and to build upon the multiplayer stuff. But I don't know, it's just to come out solely for multiplayer, with a with a known IP. I mean, it's just it's not you're not making something from nothing. You're not doing like a Valorant or something like that, which is risky in its own right. But you're gonna muddy the waters with your own brand. You
Mm-hmm.
People are gonna be like, everyone right now who knows Marathon thinks of it pretty fondly, and the old game. But then now, if this tanks, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, Marathon, that really bad multiplayer game," and no one's gonna even think about the old one anymore. So
Yeah.
it's a big gamble. I hope it doesn't explode on them, but we'll see.
With Bungie these days, yeah, you never know. Last thing, it's just another thing I thought was kind of funny. There's an article I was reading, and they were saying that I think this was on Video Games Chronicle, but they were saying Call of Duty's Activision was saying Call of Duty's development structure won't change under Microsoft. Uh, and I was just like, this is this is ridiculous. Yeah, it's not changed. It's not changed right now, but it most certainly will. It has to. Like you now have people that are over you, that are your bosses, um, and they are going to slowly but surely put in people that they want in. They're going to be doing more of the hiring. They're going to be doing more of the oversight, and they are going to change Activision to be what they want it to be, um, because they own them now. So it just it's an article that's there to kind of let people know that like, Call of Duty's not changing or whatever, yeah, it's gonna be pretty much the same as it was for the time being because it was making so much money. So it's kind of hard to argue with that. But yeah, it's going to mutate in the
This is a
long term.
message.
Go ahead.
This is a message to appease the employees. This
Oh
is
yeah,
like
that's a good point.
this is a message. This isn't really meant for the public. This is meant for all the employees who are like, "Man, I hope I don't get
I
canned."
hope I don't get
It's like,
laid
"No, no,
off.
no. Things are gonna stay the same. Don't worry. There's no restructuring because this is what's gonna happen." And this happens all the time when a big company buys out another company. Like, "No, no, we're gonna keep things the same and everything's gonna be just fine. And don't look at Microsoft's track record the last couple of years." It's like, "Don't worry, that doesn't apply to us. We're special. None of that applies to us."
So
So just keep on working. Don't update your Indeed. Just stay where you are. And yes,
that's actually spot on. So uh, I don't know what you should do, but if I was working at Activision, uh, and I was not an executive, maybe if I was an executive, I would probably be looking around for who else is hiring because, yeah, I think that's. It sounds like they're about to have a layoff. That's what it sounds like. I think that you might be right, which is horrible. But the fact that, or the possibility that you just called it is pretty interesting. So we'll keep a close eye on that and maybe be able to do a little callback to this episode
all right. So you want to put
if
money on this? A little over under action, like you were talking
a
about
little over
before.
under.
So
Well, the layoff is coming. It's just a matter of when. So yeah, the over under could be before or after March of 2025. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably say before, um,
got
yeah,
to get out before that fiscal year
yeah.
because that makes your numbers look better. Just saying.
Yeah, you got to get yeah, you do the layoffs before the end of the fiscal year. That's that yeah, so probably yeah, mid-March and then the after could be between the end of March or between mid-March and um the end of 2025, but yeah, I think that you're right. I didn't even think about it that way. I was like, yes, it will, but you're probably right. It sounds now, it does sound like a message to employees rather than to fans.
I've had companies tell our different offices, but like, no, 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 don't worry. It's like we just opened up. We're a brand new office. We're pretty vital. Those other offices weren't as busy, so we just trimming the fat. So that office is gone, and then I left, and like 2 years later, that office shut down. I'm like, ooh, yep, got out before that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just corporate loves to they love to string you along. So just remember, always look out for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, especially when they start talking about stuff like that. You gotta start looking around. But anyway, so that's the news that I have. There's more different little things here, but that was what piqued my interest.
All right. All right, for what we've been playing, I finally got me. The library decided to let me know that my copy of um, Space Marine 2
Mm,
has come in. Yeah, I've been pretty excited about this one.
nice.
This is one of those. I didn't actually get to play Space Marine 1, but I am a Warhammer 40K fan.
Mm,
Um, I generally like the Dawn of War series a lot. Dawn of War 1, the first one and all expansions and the sequel. Uh, I'm not really a Warhammer, OG fan, so, like, I guess that kind of, magic and, orcs kinda thing never really appealed to me. Uh,
oh, I see
I
what you're saying.
really have an appreciation to a lot of people who have the 40K, like, the miniatures. Anyone who does the miniatures, I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's awesome. You guys are really cool in that respect." I can't do it, so I
It's
kind of,
a
like,
lot of patience there.
yeah. But anyways, the whole, 40K, uh sci-fi epicness of what it is and how everyone seems to be grabbing a piece of the pie. And this game came out. A lot of people really seem to be liking this one. Quite a few friends are constantly playing this on the regular, and So yeah, I gave it a shot. Uh, I'm about halfway through the game, I think, and I'm digging it. I'm only playing solo right now because I just my schedule is really weird. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's third person. I don't know how to explain this other than it's just like uh the game feels like as you're playing it, it feels really well. It has the proper amount of weight and like speed with the character because they make the Space Marines bulky, and I don't know, it's just every now and then a game will introduce something to me that like the haptics with the controller that really click. And one of the things with this, and I know other games have done this, but like the as your character's just running, you can feel the vibration in the controller between the left foot and right foot on the
Oh,
controller.
whoa.
So it like vibrates from side to side. I remember like Marvel Spider-Man, depending on what you're standing on, the controller would vibrate. Like, if you're on an AC unit, it would have a
Oh,
low hum, something like that, so
dang.
when a game does, like, subtle details like that, I really appreciate it, and at the same time, the Space Marines are moving fast enough so they're not, like it feels better than, like, a Gears of War. I mean, it was funny because I had to explain this to someone who didn't know anything about the game, and I was just like, "Yeah, so they're big and bulky like they are in Gears, but they have better movement, mobility, and yes, like Gears, you have a chainsaw lance. Well, this one, you got a chainsaw sword, but you're also fighting, uh, like, waves of enemies, and it gives a good scale and a good, like, feel overall. Uh, they have it seems to be you're rolling with mostly a party of 3, for a lot of it, so that's where the multiplayer aspect comes in, is you can just it seems like you can just friends just drop in as those characters, and that's cool. I actually do hope to be playing with some other people later, and I can maybe give my opinion on that. But yeah, it's just a simple, straightforward game. I mean, there's not a whole lot. There's some minor collectibles here and there, but other than that, it's just I don't know, it's just something about the pure gameplay of just going from point A to point B, murder your way through, just revel in the crazy lore of everything. It's like, I don't know much about it. Like, there's certain things like, "Oh, yes, alright, I'm remembering just certain things about the universe." But you also just don't know you just don't need all that explained to you. You're like, "Yep, this is just crazy. Crazy for crazy's sake, and back to the action." And it's like, it's just a really satisfying, loop. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be very long as a campaign, but some of my friends have been playing it like mad. So I kind of got to see what the tail end of this thing is, because there seems to be like alternate missions as well, where as you're doing your bit, there's a B team who is doing their own objectives, and so you can actually then play as the B team. I haven't experimented with any of that as well, so and you can see that kind of doubling the length of the game in a sense, or at least giving you a lot more bang for your buck. And it's just
I have a
I really recommend giving it a chance.
I have another friend at work that started playing it, and he was telling me about it. He showed me some of the gameplay and stuff, and it did look pretty cool. The campaign, I mean, it's kind of a good thing, honestly. Is not too terribly long, I don't think. So so that's kind of a cool thing if you don't have too much time. But it does have a very nice look to it. The uh, the combat does look really cool. The thing that I was shown was a fight where you're basically on a hill. I mean, it's not like a hill, but like you're like you're on like a base essentially, and there's a Tyranid swarm that is kind of flowing like a river in the distance, and then and then there are waves of them coming to where you are on this base, and you have to fight them off in waves and secure the area or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool because it made it feel like you were kind of part of a greater like a greater battle or whatever, even though it was sort of stuff off in the distance. And being able to put that many creatures on screen was pretty was pretty cool, I thought. But yeah, I've been hearing good things about it. I mean, uh, which when since we kind of first saw the final product of the game, it kind of makes sense because it looked pretty good to me. So it makes sense a lot of other people were excited to play it too. So I'm glad you got a chance to look at it. You think you're going to be able to finish the campaign?
Yeah, I'm really gonna push myself to finish it because, like I said, it doesn't feel like it's too terribly long, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, once again, it's just there's something bombastic about it. I mean, it's I like I do like a good sci-fi story, but I also give props for a lot of stories for just throwing you in the middle of it and not having to give you a bunch of backstory or like origin or this or that. It's just like if you know, like, in since there is name characters, like you can there's stuff about them out there. But for me, coming in just as on the sequel here and just being like, yeah, all right, this guy, he was part of the Death Watch. I kind of remember what the Death Watch was, and he's he has a quote unquote stained past, stained record.
Right.
Uh, but they couldn't find anything wrong with him, so he's been absolved, kind of. But his squad has some suspicions, or at least one guy really seems to. And my idea was just like, get off your back, just leave him alone, just stop it, But just in you have he may cause trouble later is kind of what the early feelings is like. Honestly, there's not much else to it. You're walking around being like, "Hey, check out this weird architecture." And it was one of those things I had to explain it to a buddy. It was like, "Hey, dude, this is a society where it's just like, if you ever wanted to be a shonen hero, like this is kind of it. I am going to will my god and my beliefs into like being, and the harder I want it is the more stronger it becomes. It's all faith based, kind of in a weird essence. It's like this is great in its ridiculousness. So I don't know. It's a lot of fun, and like I said, the game is just really solid. It has a good feel to it. Uh, there's a good flow to it. Uh, I tried playing, with mouse and keyboard on, because my buddy had it on, on PC, and I'm like, "I just don't like it." And so when I got out my PlayStation, the controller just feels so much nicer, and it works in my brain better that way.
It seems like it would probably be
Um,
more actiony, like more that over the shoulder third person action type of game tends to work pretty well with a controller. Um, so yeah, it makes sense that it would be good that way.
yeah, there's the combat, there's certain indicators, kinda like ever since like those the old Batman Arkham games where you'll have a flash of light indicating a certain enemy is going to be able to be countered. Certain moves from certain enemies are not you can't counter, so therefore you have to dodge. And having a controller just feels really good to be able to respond to that. And then certain tougher enemies will have like a execution move, so you can see a nice, cool like glory kill. There's also combo like some combos you can pull off easy enough, and others you can like not necessarily combo but like a chain move where you can uh tag an enemy mid combat and then succeed to continue to go ahead and like execute them or do a shot, and depending if it's a tougher enemy, you pull out your pistol and it does a extra damage kind of deal. So once again, the combat flows really nicely, and that's gameplay is, king, and they do a good job of that. That's why I think you don't really need a lot of story, but also the game just looks really good. It looked good on the PC, but it looks also just equally really good on the PlayStation, and I think it. Kind of goes down to like you don't need a lot if you do everything else well. Usually, if it's a game like, a lot of other games like this, for some reason, it just doesn't click with me, but because it just feels so good, like, Remnant is, one of the games I think is kinda like in that vein where, it doesn't really have a there's story there if you want it, but the gameplay feels just so solid,
Mm.
that I think it really carries it through, and but if it's a game like Diablo for the later Diablo games, I personally can't get into them because the gameplay isn't really as satisfying and the story isn't there. So if I have neither, then I'm not. Like I'll trudge through if it's a really good story, or in this case, if there's a lack of story, um, to a certain extent. Like, this is just enough to get me going, and if I really want to, I can look into more, but,
Mm.
uh, this does everything else really good, and, then yeah. So, now the question is if I, like, would I have been happy to buy this on day one full price kind of deal? Um, with friends, yes, I think that'd be alright. Because some, like I said, some of my friends are playing it like not maybe not nightly, but they're playing it a couple days a week.
Pretty often,
I
yeah.
can see them on my PlayStation, like, but so if you have a group like that, in this case, it's been out long enough. Uh, Maybe wait till Black Friday if you're on the fence and try to pick it up because it'll probably be on sale for like my guess is like $10 cheaper or something like that. And I think that would most definitely be okay to pick up. Um, once again, a lot of people there's people all over the fence with if they want a long campaign or if they want a short campaign. I think this is long enough to make it worth my time, and especially if you do the whole uh, satisfaction like movie comparison, right? Like you pay X amount to go to a movie, and you walk after 2.5 hours. Are you satisfied with what you spent that? And then put that much kind of payment into a video game. I think the amount of satisfaction I'm getting from it would warrant buying the game, even if it wasn't at a discount. But hey, like I said, just around the corner, Black Friday, uh, totally worth it. Then I think.
Yeah, yeah, it probably will
All right.
be kind of discounted, but I'm glad you're enjoying it.
For sure. I mean, once again, it's one of those weird things that most of my games are digital, but
Mm,
I always get the physical anything with the consoles with a disk drive just so I can check out games from the library and it helps my pocketbook. And I mean, unfortunately, I just the games I really do like, or in the long run, I'll end up probably buying it just to fill up my catalog. But when it's on super sale, uh, now a game that's unfortunate, like, the few friends that I knew that were playing this, like, I didn't realize they were getting into this game until I already saw them on, my PlayStation
oh yeah,
login being like, "Hey," like, they've been playing this game for a while. I'm like, "Oh, dang." Now with Monster Hunter, I already have friends lined up being, like, ready to go, and, so like I said, the friends that were playing, Space Marine 2, they've all started playing the Monster Hunter beta, which I'm like, "Dang, I've been so busy that I haven't been able to get on that." So they're pretty much being like, "Yeah, day 1, like, let's all do this." I'm like, "Alright, probably, as so long as I have the time." And I know this was one of the ones you were looking at, like Monster Hunter, you're looking at trying to get in, like, day 1 because you missed out on Worlds.
yeah.
So,
I'd like to, but yeah, I'd like to.
alright, yeah, that's really it, but for what I've been playing, haven't really got a whole lot else. Uh, but yeah, so how about to what we've been watching? Um Real quick, I finally got around to seeing that Sonic 2. Uh, so I know it's a little late. The Sonic 3 coming out just around the corner.
Oh wow, yeah, I forgot.
And yeah, you don't want to watch Keanu as Shadow?
I I don't really care. But I'm sure someone will enjoy that.
Well, my eldest, he has a friend that had a birthday party recently and big fan of Sonic. And I'm like, dude, I know you know of Sonic through just like the universe kind of, but you don't actually if you've never seen or played anything Sonic firsthand. So I'm like, I remember that first Sonic movie, and just like everyone else at the time, we all just agreed universally it's better than we expected. So going back to it, I'm like, let's go ahead and have you see this, and we'll go ahead and watch the second one as well. So first Sonic movie recap. Uh, yeah, still better than expected originally. It's not a great movie, but it's okay. Uh, it's not egregious in any ways. I mean, the old groupie people are like, yeah, Sonic flosses. It's dumb and it doesn't hold up. After a certain amount of time. Uh, and he flosses more than once in the first movie. That's tragic. They bring it back in the second movie. Also kind of tragic. But other than that, I mean, it's funny enough, entertaining enough, and they do the thing of like the X-Men Days of Future Past where like Quicksilver or whatever, we're gonna go so fast everything stands still. The problem is when you do like from a story mode, like wait, if you can move so fast that everything's standing still all the time, there's never a threat to you. There's never a time where you're being shot at that you're in danger. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, then that's kind of the constant go around. I know a friend who likes a lot of movies was very upset with Sonic 2. Like, and I'm like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah, they made Dr. Robotnik, window looking dumb." And, like,
Mm.
because Knuckles had to be the main antagonist for all the marketing. And I'm like,
Oh.
so the second movie was, it's okay. Once again, it's like as far as all the kids stuff I could be watching, all the kids entertainment off of YouTube or something like that. Yeah, I've seen the Sonic 2 now a couple times, and it's not bad. Uh, it does all the things right, makes my kid happy, and I don't walk away from it super angry, so there you go. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming the 3rd movie will be the same,
I
you
mean, they're
know?
kids movies. Like you see, like I started to watch the Mario movie, and I was like, yeah, this is not. I mean, it's a kids movie. The Pokemon movie, I did watch that, but there was
Detective
a
Pikachu or
sorry, yeah,
which Pokemon movie?
sorry, that's what I meant. The Detective Pikachu movie. I watched that like not too long ago, and I was like, there was probably like 30% of it that I was like kind of interested in, or thought was a little bit entertaining, and the rest of it was just kids stuff. And I was like, yeah,
I
okay.
checked out of that movie. My brain, I legitimately checked out of it. I was like, I remember watching it being like, kind of like, "What happened?" I completely just like daydreaming. That movie,
Yeah, the
I
Mr.
was
Mime
not.
stuff was. I mean, I'm not the first person to say this, but I'm pretty sure the Mr. Mime stuff is probably the best because it's just it's so stupid. but because they're having to get him to mime what he knows, and so it's that's probably like the best part, and then the rest is sort of just like, all right, it is a kids movie, can kind of tune out, and it's not offensive, so that's all right.
Yeah, I think that's coming from an era of movies where you're looking at like the original Super Mario or the Street Fighter movie, where like those movies were legitimately bad,
Mm,
and they were put off, like they were marketed in a terrible way. Uh, so I mean, when the best thing you had going for you was the Mortal Kombat movie, which was more like Enter the Dragon than anything else. Uh,
yeah.
I mean, so we've come a long way is what we're saying,
Oh yeah.
but at the same time, it's legitimately, like, okay for parents to go watch and, like, adults to see, and no one's gonna like, you're either gonna say it's okay, like, but you at least you're not gonna walk away being, like, super angry, and that's the key, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes corporate America does win, and the target audience or whatever stuff, it's like, yeah, that stuff is there for a reason. It is like, this is the kind of product you have. It's not for everybody. You know, um, the Mario movie in the '90s. It's like that should have been handled very differently. That should have been, okay. We need to market this to kids. It's a kids video game. We need to market it to kids and make make it work like that. And they didn't really. And the Street Fighter sort of the same way. Mortal Kombat. Uh, there's you got to know your niche, and I think that video games as an industry, when converting to movies, has learned their niche. So yeah,
Well, when you compare it to any U Bowl film, like, these are all masterpieces, so
yeah,
if you wanna enjoy a bad time, come up with a drinking game and watch any U Bowl movie, and most definitely. So, alright, yeah, and then I actually got around to, watching, The Fall Guy, and I ended up seeing this, off of Peacock. Uh, they had an extended cut, and I just remember this movie coming out and seeing marketing on it. I'm like, "Yeah, it looks neat," it's supposed to be based off the old TV show and stuff like that. Uh,
it's kind of an action
but
comedy, right? Just sort of like, hey, this is
yeah, I
funny.
mean,
It's fun and funny, right?
yeah, paying tribute pretty much to like stunt acting and everything like that. I'm like, that's cool. That's awesome. Uh, but for some reason, I remember just hearing about like it just didn't really sell well. Like it wasn't just ticket sales weren't really that much. So when they had the extended cut, I'm like, yeah, well, if I'm gonna watch it, I might as well watch the full thing. Uh, and actually, I liked it. It's this, it's kind of it's just a romantic comedy for the most part. Is
Mm,
surprisingly what it was. They have a whole, subplot, like mystery story kind of going on, and uh, they essentially, uh, the main guy, the girl he's crushing on, ends up she's later on she's directing a film, and essentially it's a Dune spoof is the best way for me to play like, say it, and it's like a Mad Max meets Dune spoof, like, kind of a weird way, Cowboys and Aliens, and it was just like but they do the Dune theme song, from, like, the new, Hans Zimmer, like, that woman kinda doing that singing chant,
yeah.
but they kinda do it, like, off key and kinda a little different, I'm like and I just laughed out loud on that one, 'cause I'm like, "That's dumb," and I like it because that the music's really good, for Dune, but at the same time, it's also gonna be overly played for the next forever, just like, the Inception "bwah,"
Yeah.
noise, so, like, it was cool when you first saw it, but then after you heard it for upteenth time, you're like, "I'm done, I'm out," like, and
Yeah.
that's kinda how I feel about but that's why I thought it was funny when they made a joke about it, and the stunts are all really good. They did a car roll, and it's funny because 'cause I'm counting the rolls, and I'm like, "Oh, that's a new world record." And then they're all cheering, like, "It's a world record." I'm like, "Yeah," because I remember Casino Royale being the big deal when that happened, you know?
That's funny.
Uh, yeah, it's like I was always like growing up watching a bunch of movies and then, like Jackie Chan and stuff like that, just being really cool, like, into the stunt, world, so having them do all these neat things and just doing, like, little long cuts, like a modern film would do, someone getting hit by a car, and then you would jump cut from inside the windshield outside, to the ground, but this one, they do kind of a long cut of, you know, a quote, unquote, "long cut." It's, a guy getting hit by a car, then rolling to the ground, and then they transition, but at least you get to see the full take, and,
Mm.
like, that's cool. Seeing things like that, are pretty impressive, and I don't know, I found it funny and entertaining. It's not like the greatest thing of all time, but honestly, it was a really decent way to spend like a Saturday night. So yeah, I would recommend it if you were interested in like a rom com or something like that. It's I forget how long it was. It's like 2.5 hours long or something like that. The extended. Um, so yeah, totally. If you have a time, and you want if you're on the fence about watching something, uh, I like I said, I actually liked it, so, yeah. I know you like to watch, some bad movies from here and there, so if you have a choice between a bad movie or this movie, I'd say maybe go watch this movie.
Okay. I don't know what it's playing on right now. I guess I could go find it.
Like I said, Peacock was what I saw it off of, but I'm not really sure what else, though.
I'm sure it'll make the rounds
Um,
at some point to whatever. It'll be on HBO Max or on Netflix eventually. But yeah, my dad saw it. He said he thought it was pretty good. He wasn't like overly excited about it, but he was like, "Oh, it was pretty good, pretty good." So yeah, it seemed like it'd be fun and funny, with some kind of dumb action, but also just action comedies. Uh, like action comedies are kind of rare. I'm sure it's probably more romance than anything else, or rom com than like anything else. But the action part of it kind of piques my interest. So yeah, looked all right.
yeah, alright, then, the last thing I really watched that was, of note is I got around to watching that Blue Lock anime movie.
Hmm.
90 minutes of recap told by a different perspective, but
Oh
mostly
no.
just a recap.
Oh no. Okay, I'm
So
glad I didn't watch it.
if you forgot the events of the first season
Yeah.
and you wanted to condense it into a 90-minute chunk, uh, this is probably the best way to do it. Um, this is based off of Nagi's character, and I completely didn't care. Uh,
Okay.
so it was like it's him and his buddy, which I can't remember even his buddy's name now, but um the whole like we're gonna become pros together, and Nagi just being like, I don't really care, but being dragged along anyways. And I forget because his friend's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be like everything comes to me so easily. My daddy's rich, and I'm gonna be like, whatever. But I want to make it on my own, and like I'm gonna prove to like that I can be the best at something, and I'm gonna join a team sport." I'm like, how does that prove your individuality when you're like, but this
Anime
is all
logic,
about
bro.
strikers.
Anime logic.
That's Blue
Yeah.
Lock. Blue Lock's all about you being a solo player and like
And a
the
team.
I in team.
Yeah. Yes. It's
Um,
yeah,
So
man.
that was kind of like that it was just, uh I would say it's a really good second screen thing to have. Like,
Mm.
just, you know, I don't know, play your mobile game. I don't know. Watch a different YouTube video and just have this playing, and then you can kinda like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah, oh, yep, those were the events." Because
Mm.
it's funny because they sit on certain spots really long, and they go through a drawn out little bit, but the next thing you know, they kind of, montage or, like, jump cut to the next thing right away. I'm like, "Okay, you skipped all of that little bit, and now you're next." Anyways, but this is all a good precursor 'cause season 2's already started. They already have a couple episodes in English, and
Dang.
so far, it's alright. I mean, a lot of people are upset about the quality. Um, I guess since I'm watching, like, I'm just watching most of this just on a phone, like, and I'm not really paying too much terrible attention. The quality, I'm not really
Doesn't bother you as much.
upset about. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm like, but also I'm not as heavily invested in it. Like, that's
Gotcha.
the thing is I can see fans, people who are really excited about it, um, them being disappointed, and I'm like, yeah, that stinks. And I feel like that's kind of the common thing nowadays is the studios being too rushed and the animation quality of things going down. Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah,
there was some
so
rough stuff. I don't know. I couldn't point to anything exactly, but there's a lot of there's a lot of stills in the first season, which I thought the first season was good. But there was a lot of stills and a lot of times where there really wasn't much going on, and then a lot of the line art looked kind of scratchy. It was stylized and supposed to be that way, but yeah, they're not. It didn't really wow me in like the actual animation from like minute to minute. They had some pretty good stuff, but definitely nothing like there's nothing like Demon Slayer that really popped off the screen, even on some of the higher level, even on some of the bigger moments where they put in more effort. So it's kind of disappointing that they didn't that they're that the quality has gone. The people are complaining about the quality going down because I didn't feel like it was all that high to begin with. Um, but yeah, this one up or for the Blue Lock season 2, I do want to try to watch that. There's a lot to watch, but that one I did want to try to keep up with
it
whenever
was
it
funny
came
because
out.
I think I remember telling you beforehand. I don't know if it was on the podcast last time or if it was just off air, but how they came out with Prince of Tennis or like the second later season. I'm like, why did they come out with this in the middle of nowhere? It just seemed really random to come out with this later season that for a manga that's been done with forever ago, or at least that arc, and it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, and then now that Blue Lock's out, I'm like, oh, they're jumping on this bandwagon because they're doing Blue Lock, the U20 or something like under 20 division. They're kind of focusing on that, and like the Prince of Tennis second season or whatever is all about the U17 tournament stuff. I'm like, okay, so they're just trying to capitalize on kind of synergy-ish branding, like cribbing off of Blue Lock. Be like,
Yeah,
we're doing a younger kids thing too for a thing that's been I don't know, maybe people are really excited about it. I haven't been paying enough attention to Prince of Tennis, but it's just one of those things that like I like sports anime too if they're done really well, but then other times it's just like super cringy. And I feel like that's kind of like a lot of the baseball stuff. Like I like it to a certain extent, but they end up drawing everything out way too much. With most baseball anime, for example, it's like we're gonna sit and talk, and we're gonna spend like 4 episodes on a single game. It's just like when the one episode took like 2 innings. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right?
yeah.
Um, and like recently, look this up when you get a
IQ.
chance to, but just look up the poster about Haikyuu,
Hmm.
the volleyball anime. They came out with their movie. Uh, that recently dropped, I guess. And it's like it's the battle of the garbage dump, because it's two like famously lower teams. But the poster is one of the dumbest things I've seen. Uh, you have two characters jumping at each other, wielding knives, like because they gotta look tough and, like, full on you're talking about, like, a
Knife fight.
K-bar, Rambo knife, like, "I'm gonna stab you in the side of your head, I'm gonna gouge you in the neck." Like, it is a dumb poster for volleyball. Um, but, it's one of those things
Yeah.
like, "Wow, just you really had to make it look as cool as you could," and it's not.
People love Haikyuu. Um,
Uh, it
okay.
was fun, but it wasn't as like but there's it wasn't as cool. I don't know, people. Yes, like I said, it was okay. It was a fun thing, but once again, that poster is just dumb as hell. So give it a shot. Take a look at it and just you can have a good laugh.
Okay.
All right. That's about it for what I've been watching. I've watched a handful of little movies here and there. Bunch of new anime popping off here, like all over the place, and there's some interesting stuff. I mean, I think there's one like the One Trillionaire game, which is entertaining, but man, that's weird animation. Their faces are different.
Mm.
Um, and it's yeah, I'm not really 100% sure if I'm sold on it or not, but it's okay. So but yeah, why don't you tell me what you've been watching, or like you got to see something you've been sitting on something for a while you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of movies, and I'll probably talk about some of those other ones later. But this one, I watched Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, I think is the subtitle or whatever. But yeah, so this is a prequel to the Mad Max Fury Road that came out back in 2014, um, maybe late 2013, 2014, somewhere in there, maybe 2015. I could be wrong. Anyway, about 10 years
2015
ago.
is when it came out.
Okay, okay. And so so Furiosa, I'm not gonna spoil it because Joe, you're gonna try to watch it at some point. You told me, um, but when this came out in the theaters, I was just like, eh, I'm not gonna try to go see it. But it came to HBO, so I was like, oh, okay. So I turned it on and I watched it, and um, I was I was very entertained. I was very entertained. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. There are some parts in it that I somewhat early on where I was like, there were some parts that were just too much green screen or too obviously green screen, um, which is part of why I liked Fury Road so much, is because yeah, there's a lot of green screen, and I actually did go back and watch that. Watching Furiosa inspired me to go back and watch a good portion of Fury Road, and going back on the second watch or upteenth watch, I was like, oh yeah, there is a lot more green screen in this than I remember, but I was kind of looking for it then. With Furiosa, there's a couple parts where it just sticks out way too much, but those parts are few and far between, I found. Um, and the rest of it I thought was pretty great. Uh, they bring back most of the cast uh, from at least the people that are relevant to the story in Furiosa. All of the bad guys. They bring back almost all of those. Got the same actors. I'm pretty sure, and make them look younger or whatever. Um, but so that was pretty cool, and they just they do a good job of giving you some of the same flavor of action as Fury Road, but it is very much sort of its own story, and uh, kind of different in some key ways. I would say this story is definitely more expansive. Fury Road was about 2 hours, and this movie is like 2.5. So there's quite a bit more that goes on, um, and yeah. So it was good. It was good overall. Uh, there's actually some things in it that I found to be really funny. Um, I don't think there's anything in Fury Road that was particularly comedic, but in Furiosa, there are some definite moments that I thought were just hilarious. And so I won't spoil those, but look out for those and let me know if you think that there's anything that's funny about it. I liked Chris Hemsworth in this role. I didn't think that I would, but I thought he did a pretty bang up job. He did a pretty good job. And then Anya Taylor Joy also did pretty good. She didn't have to do as much in certain parts, but where she did, I think she shined pretty well. And yeah, there's the other thing that I'll say about this movie is that I think that Furiosa makes Fury Road better, which is probably the nicest thing that I can say about it. Is it fills in a lot of stuff that made me want to go watch for Fury Road again, but then also kind of informed me about mostly Furiosa, obviously, but also some of the other characters, some of like the bad guys and stuff, where I was like, okay, I feel like I know that character better now, and it makes me think about more things as I'm watching Fury Road. So yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know what number I'd give it. Probably high sevens or maybe an eight. It's been a couple weeks since I've watched it, so I had time to simmer on it. But yeah, it was definitely worth my time, and I was
Mhm.
thoroughly entertained.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's one of those things that I would have loved to see in theaters. I just can't afford, or I'm not going to afford paying a daycare for two or a babysitter for two
Yeah,
kids to
it's
go watch a movie at the movie theater prices. But it's one of those things that like the best way to see certain movies like this or like Godzilla minus one, in my opinion, is to see them in theaters because
yeah,
they're like, it's there's a added bonus to the spectacle of being in a theater for it, and that's like one of those few incidents. And like with you have me curious, but one of the things is Fury Road is one of my it's one of my top favorite movies. It's not like it is not my number one, but it's really high up there. I hold it in probably top 10 of just if I had to go overall movies. Like I really do like Fury Road that much. Part of the reason why I like it is because once again, kind of like I mentioned before with um, Space Marine, is you don't need to know a lot of it. Like, yes, I've seen all the other Mad Max films up until then, but this is also kind of like a different take, loosely based off the first, but not really, it's like, no evidence of Thunderdome in this, um,
yeah,
stuff like that. It's just so it's one of those. Um, it's in the world. It's maybe a different timeline, different universe, but with this, so I didn't need to know about the feeling of the characters, but it may, since you liked it, I'll go ahead and give it a shot. Like I'm more interested in giving it a shot, but it's one of the things that I also don't have
because
the current streaming services for it.
well,
So
that's kind of the way I thought about it when I saw previews for it. Is I was like, I kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, I don't need this. I don't need to know Furiosa's backstory. I understand why they did it because it's the most sellable thing that they can do with with the that universe right now. I was like, I don't need to know all that. So when I started watching it at home, I kind of came in with that idea with like, let's probably have some pretty good action, but and it's low stakes because I can watch it, like whenever. But I found myself being pretty wrapped up in the story and being like, okay, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. And it's like I know what's going to happen, but there's a lot of, I mean, ultimately, but there's a lot of side characters that are introduced. It's like, well, do they live? Do they die? Like, what happens with them? Um, and so it it
I didn't see
surprised.
them in the first one, so they're dead. That's
Well, yeah, I mean that's like the most likely conclusion, but there's a lot of other, but there's a lot of stuff that like happens that just it kind of makes you um it kind of justifies itself because it sets up stuff. It's like, well, yeah, Furiosa lives long enough to be in Fury Road, but are these other things accomplished, and this other stuff happens, and the world building that they do in Fury Road, I think that they do a lot more of that um, in this one in Furiosa, but not, but it doesn't belabor it, and it just stays true. That some of the criticisms I have would say I would have would just be with some of the suspending disbelief gets difficult on a couple occasions that I won't talk about right now, but probably after you watch it, I will. Um, and so it's like okay, we're here. This is what you feel like you got to do to get through this story. To tell me the story, it's like okay. So I would criticize it there probably a little bit, but besides that, um, the action and some of the stuff that they do, and the story overall, um, pretty good. It's pretty good.
all right. Yeah, and then on the last note, just because I mentioned Godzilla minus one being worth seeing in theaters, I forgot that because of the 70th anniversary, I should have probably had this in the news. They're bringing it back to theaters for November. Certain
Oh,
theaters will be carrying Godzilla minus one. Uh, I think they're supposed to be having some theaters have the black and white version,
okay.
which would be really cool to see. Um, and I think news had just dropped about the director, same director is going to be back to make
I
a
did.
sequel of some kind,
I did
like
just see that. Yeah,
next installment. So yeah, not no details about if it's a direct sequel, prequel, another like anything like that. So either way, I'm kind of up for what they're going to be doing next, if especially since keeping the director. But also, hey, if you didn't get around to seeing it, and it's like maybe now is the chance to go see it in theaters. I especially if like I said, Mad Max did the black and white version, Fury Road that is. When they came out too, they had a Blu-ray version of that, and so that was pretty cool. I like it when you're able to pull off something like that and pull it off well, I should say. So I haven't seen the Godzilla minus one black and white version, but I would like to see it. I think that'd be neat. So, all right.
that'd be cool.
Well, if you made it this far, we appreciate it. I mean, this has been yeah, ADP, episode 99. And Nick, as always, what are some words of wisdom you have for the people out there?
Communication Workers of America is not in Britain.
All right. Until next time, you all just take it easy.
Bye.